Okay, welcome back. And so here's the first update on the jet, the Embraer 190. And that's what it looks like, or what I hope it's going to look like. This is my first jet, in case anybody has accidentally stumbled upon my channel and doesn't know. I'm usually a car builder. I have an interest in airplanes. I've never been able to build one, and giving it a good try this time. Moving right along, update number one. There's only 55 parts in the whole kit, so it shouldn't take that long to do this. Now this is the cockpit, of course. This was interesting. This was all one piece. One big molded piece on the sprue like this, and so I went with the color callouts that they asked for. And that is a super light gray on the back there. I can't remember what they called it, but there is no instrument panel detail. Of course, we're in 1/144th scale and a small jet, so even the top of the flight sticks, that's supposed to be like an upside down V on the top of those, and that's not included in the kit and not represented. Would be easy to put those on there, but it's not there. And so that's the best I could do on that for now. And just been working on the basic stuff. I'm going with the color call out again. They went with this tan color for the inside of the landing gear areas. These pieces here, of course, is the bottom of the wing. You can tell by the winglet. I'm going to try to pick this up, and it's not going to work. Okay, so that goes in there, and that's how that works. Yeah, and the fit is really good on this kit, I will say. It's just a little bit hard to do. A little hard to do with one hand and the camera and so on, but you get the gist. You guys that film as you're building, you amaze me. I cannot do that. Anyway, there's the inside of the main gear there. This piece fits over there, and that is the belly of the plane. And that's how that's going to look. I don't know why I'm bothering to show all this. So there is you got to paint a little bit of the inside of the fuselage to finish off that box with the way that goes in. And then of course that'll mount in there. And then you put your two halves together, or you put, no, put the halves together, glue this onto here, and then slip the thing in, I think. Anyway, the body is very, very white, as you can see. This is very nice, super white plastic. I think that they kind of were doing that on purpose to give you the option to not paint it, but when you put the two halves together, you're going to have that nasty seam, and there's just no way to fill that seam without having to paint, so I'll end up painting it. So anyway, the next scene will be more done. Okay, so as I had promised, there's more done. Let's see, up here, these are just mocked up. I just got these in place where they're supposed to go, and I see right now this has fallen over. This is supposed to be up on the end. You get it. Anyway, the cockpit is where it's supposed to go, and in the bottom of it shows this little, hadn't even realized it, there's your well for the front landing gear. And okay, so I've got the fairings on. These were kind of a lot of work, as you can see these marks on there. They had a real deep sinkholes on them, and I have filled and sanded them all, and now it's ready for painting. But those were all separate pieces that you glue on there. And just about got the wing. Of course, I've got to mask off these areas here, or just paint them over again. And got the horizontal stabilizers ready to be painted at the same time. And we're going with a super light gray on that because that's what they're calling for. Very light gray on the wings. And so that's actually why I got this paint, if you're remembering from the last paint test. It is a super light gray. I actually have the spoon from that test right here. Super light gray. And so that is going to look pretty good on the wing, I think. And we're getting ready to spray it. I know I've got to do some sanding on the front edge to get the two halves together. Without a seam, you pretty much got to glue all along the seam, let it squirt out, and then sand it off. And then you should have no seam. And so I'll do that, and then I'll paint it, and then I'll come back. Okay, and so here they are. They're all painted that light gray, the chalky finish, and I'm happy to report that all the detail is still there. This is 2 coats of that stuff. I can get in nice and close here. You can see that even at 2 coats, all the wing detail is still there. Pretty happy about that. And so, yeah, like I was saying in the paint test, I believe this stuff is just primer, but it's a nice high-hiding, thin, very thin primer. You see on this one. You know, all the details there. So that's pretty good. Of course, I'm going to have to work on the those fairings sticking out like that. You see that? I wasn't thinking. I'm going to have to sand a little more and touch those up. That's going to drive me crazy. But yeah, on the underside here, let me see, flip this whole thing around. Kind of like a bat. Okay, and let's take a look at that. Yeah, so I just painted over the wheel well, and I'll go in there with the brush paint. I couldn't think of a way to do that without, I mean, I couldn't think of a way to really mask in there where I wasn't going to have to paint again anyway. Of course, the slot that's left is where the engine's going to hang. And so on. And this one looks just as good. And now the horizontal stabilizers, I painted a little bit thicker. I probably painted too thick, but still, even at that, you can still see the detail still there. And where's the other one? It's back there. There we go. And so there we go. Pretty happy about that. So I can move on and start to get the landing gear assembled and start putting the fuselage halves together. And I guess that's what will be in the next scene. Okay, so moving right along, as you can see here, I've got the backs of the fairings looking better. I just sanded them and then decanted some of the chalk paint into a cup and brushed it on and made those look better. And so that is done and ready, and we're getting ready to glue the fuselage together. I've got the cockpit is glued in there now. It's super glued in there. And as expected, when you put the 2 halves together, they don't quite go all the way together, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of sanding on the edge of the right there. I'm going to have to sand that a little bit to get it to go together nice. And now, when I put the 2 halves together, normally when I'm putting like 2 engine halves together or 2 halves of anything that's smaller than this, I normally just put a bead of glue all the way around the whole thing, and then put the 2 halves together, and then let the the glue kind of squish together and spew out, and that makes your filler. And then you just, after all that hardens, you go and sand all the glue off and make everything smooth. But this is so darn big, I don't think that's quite going to work. So I think that what I'm going to do is pick a whole bunch of glue points and glue it together and rubber band it together, and then later on go in with putty to fill the seam. But it is prepared. It's ready to happen here. Also, the correction on this piece here, this is the wells for the main landing gear. That doesn't glue onto the body. That glues onto this piece, like this. And then, you know, impossible to do with one hand, but you get the idea. And then this piece here, after that's glued onto there, you just glue that onto the belly there, and that makes that easier. So that's how that's gonna happen. You'll be able to see that better in the next scene, because I'm about ready to glue these two halves together, and that is probably about where we're going to wrap this one up, but I want to at least get a good look at that. So the next scene, these two halves will be together. Okay, yeah, but before I glue these two halves together, I wanted to mention this thing that is normal with airplane kits. You have to put a weight up in the nose. See, right here they're saying to put 20 grams of some kind of weight up in the nose. Now, I have no idea how to measure that. So what I did is I just I glued, not glued, but what is it, caulk. I caulked these screws into the nose. It is probably more than 20 grams, but the idea is because in plastic there's so much weight in the rear that if you have it setting on its landing gear, it could wheelie, or it probably will wheelie. So the weight is just to keep the nose down if you're displaying it on the tarmac. So I just wanted to mention that those are in there before I glue the halves together, and you'll never be able to see them again. That was my solution anyway. So let's do this. Let's glue it together. Okay, and so here we got the fuselage halves are glued together now, and I took that opportunity to do a mock-up. Now the wings and the horizontal stabilizers are not glued in; they're just sitting there. But I couldn't resist actually mocking it up, so there it is. Now I'm going to wrap this update up right here, because as it turns out I'm going to have a lot of filling to do. Not filling, or yeah, putty. I just barely got started on it there, as you can see, and I've never done anything like this, and as I was saying, I didn't run glue all the way around the seam, because gosh, by the time you get all the way around the seam, it would have started drying, and I'm not sure if it would have, I don't know, maybe it would have worked, maybe it wouldn't have. But I just picked the points, pretty much just the alignment pin points is where I applied the glue, and that held it together really nice. I've got it together, you know, flush, but I do have this nasty seam that I knew was coming, and it's going to be a long process of puttying and sanding, and then re-puttying and re-sanding and then digging your panel lines back out, and then what does the actual seam look like after all that? I don't know, but it's the only thing you can do. And then how well am I going to be able to cover? Hopefully the gray isn't going to bleed through the white paint when I get to that. But we won't know until we get there. I just wanted to show you what it's looking like in mock-up. Now we've got this situation here on the back. I don't know if you can see these horizontal stabilizers are not lining up exactly perfectly, and they're just kind of loose in there. So I think that when you actually go to glue, you're going to have to find exactly the right angle and having it set on something. I'm going to have to pile some stuff up and have it propped up to have it glue exactly at the right angle. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But just wanted to point that out. The main wings seem to be sitting at the right angle, but these back ones didn't, especially that one on the right, not exactly right. And honestly, I think they're both supposed to be up a bit more. I wish I had the instructions out so that I could show you. They've got the at the back of it. I think it was the back. Maybe it's the box, but somewhere they were showing the exact kind of elevations that you were going to need for those. And yeah, maybe it's the box. Okay. But anyway, no, it's not the box. It's somewhere. But anyway, that's going to kind of wrap it up on this. This is going to be good practice for another kit that I just happened to have run across. I forgot about because it's sitting up on top. Here, let me show you. If anybody remembers this one. Well, up we go. Check it out. I still have this giant-sized 1/72nd scale space shuttle up here, and it's gonna be the same sort of situation where the fuselage halves get glued together, and then there's a nasty seam. But on this one, there's going to be all this tile work that is going to be a challenge to not make that look absolutely terrible when you are filling a seam. That, and I remember on this one, the nose doesn't, when the two halves are together, the nose doesn't touch. So I have that to look forward to. But yeah, I have all the parts for this. A lot of them are finished. In fact, this is painted, which was probably a bad idea, because after the seam gets glued together and filled, it's going to have to be repainted. And that's just a fact of life. But it's going to, you know, the airplane that I'm working on is going to be really good practice for eventually getting back to that space shuttle. That will wrap it up for this one. I think it's really going to only be a kind of a 2-episode, 2-update thing, because we just got to get the paint and the landing gear and the engines on, and there's nothing left of this thing. So that'll be coming in the next update. I appreciate y'all watching, and y'all have a good one.